Hi, I'm your host, Beth Renoff, and this is Are You Afraid of the Talk? Join me as I shine a light on the difficult conversations we keep in the dark. Follow the journeys of everyday people as they share their struggles with talking about different topics, from personal problems to societal issues. My hope is to get to the root of what holds people back from initiating these discussions and normalize these conversations by having them. So, are you afraid of the talk? Hi, everyone. Welcome to Are You Afraid of the Talk? I'm your host, Beth Renoff, and today with me I have Anand Sukadia. And Anand, please, thank you for coming first off, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Anand Sukadia, and I am a human being. I try to base myself in love, and what I do in my life, I have a couple of things that I work on, projects. I have my Limitless One podcast where I explore the nature of being limitless, and I interview deep souls that are looking to live a purposeful, limitless life in whatever field that they're into. So I'm having some great conversations along the way, having a lot of fun doing it. Also, I have a wellness center in Jersey City. It's called Om Life Wellness Modern Recovery Spa. And we focus on all things for stress relief, inflammation help, as well as athletic recovery. So we focus on zero gravity flotation therapy, whole body cryotherapy, infrared saunas, a whole gambit of a suite of just holistic services. It's all about doing no harm and getting the maximum benefits for our clients when they deal with various physical, mental, spiritual issues. We also do hypnotherapy and breath work and all these kind of beautiful things, and have events as well to bring the community together and help people reach their truest self. And that's what my whole journey in life is about. Is it took me some time to find who I am as a person and where I want to stand and what I want to do and elevate myself. So I figured, why not open a business that is going to help other people do the same thing and help myself along the way. So that's what I decided to do 4 years ago, and I'm having a blast doing it right now. Also working on a couple other things. I'm getting heavily involved in cryptocurrency investing. So that's been a really cool side project that I've been involved in. And just living life every single day and being in gratitude and being in happiness.
Mm-hmm. I love Home Life. It's
Thank
one
you.
of my favorite places, and we have really good conversations. So I invited you on because I was actually on the Limitless podcast, which was awesome. And I wanted him to come to this side and see, what it's like to be on my side of things with the more therapy focused, really tapping into vulnerability, which I think goes along with everything you just talked about. So how I like to start is doing an icebreaker. So just to see, everybody can see like where your head's at, how you think, and something fun to get to know you. So if you could instantly become an expert in something, what would it be and why?
Yeah, so to go along the limitless theme of my life, I truly believe in abundance on every level, mentally, physically, spiritually. And I think that, not that I'm a very materialistic person, but I do believe that wealth creation is a thing that gives you a lot of choice in life, where you want to live, how you want to spend your time, what choices you want to make, and what experiences you want to have. So if I could instantly become an expert in, say, cryptocurrency trading, I think there's so many different ways of making money in crypto, whether it's, long-term holds, whether it's investing in the right coins, trading, staking, decentralized finance. There's so many different ways, right? So there's a whole gambit of it. If I could snap my fingers and become an expert, it's taken me a long time to learn every aspect of it and get really proficient at it. But if I could do it immediately, that would be the one thing. Because at the end of the day, it allows me to work from my phone or from my laptop. I can get in and out of things very quickly, make really good financial gains from it, and then obviously have the choice of how I want to spend my time, which is really the way I want to spend my time is more in the spiritual endeavors and helping other people, reach their limitless potential. But I think from a financial perspective, yeah, that cryptocurrency expertise would be phenomenal at this moment.
Yeah. And it sounds like you value, you know, um, working smart, which I think is something a lot of people haven't caught on to yet in this American hustle kind of culture. So it's like working smart, having security so that you're able to live authentically and do exactly what you want and what your purpose is and figure that out. So I love that, you know, expertise and everything like you involve yourself in.
Thank you.
So yeah, so I think that kind of leads to like all these things that you're so easily able to talk about. And I think there are certain categories that are easier. You know, you talk about your business, you talk about your interests. Like, what makes those things easy to talk about?
Yeah, I think that I really, for a long time, I spent a lot of years in self development because I think growing up, I think we talked about this privately or possibly on the podcast that you were on with me.
Mhm.
But for a long time growing up, like my parents are amazing people. They came from India in 1970s, came here, had full time jobs. They were physicians, and they worked really really hard. And they also spent a lot of time with the community. So I think that they didn't get a lot of time to spend individually, or even know how to raise three kids in a new country between both cultures.
Mhm.
So I kind of felt like I had to figure things out on my own a lot, and nothing
Mhm.
wrong with that. My parents loved me; they did so much for me, and I thank them so much for everything that they provided for me. But at the end of the day, I always felt like I wasn't enough, right? So I didn't feel fully part
Mhm.
of the Indian culture because I was, American, with my family members, and then I didn't feel fully
Mhm.
part of the American culture because I was Indian and I was different, right? So there was a lot of
Mhm.
reconciling and trying to understand who I am. So ever since I was in high school and in college, I was pretty shy. And then I realized at some point, listen, is this the way that I want a life? Do I want to live fully expansive, or do I want to play small and just, be like an introvert and not really live my purpose, live my life? And in order to do that, I had to really seek to see what was my truest purpose. And I always knew from a young age, like I wanted to open up a center that kind of marries both like cultures, the Eastern, philosophies as well as Western technologies and things like that. So that was one of the things I had in my back of my mind, but I realized I needed to do the inner work on myself. So I did a lot of Tony Robbins events. I did a lot of other self-development
Mhm.
courses, a lot of meditation, a lot of spiritual journeys. I did psychedelics, and that was probably one of the biggest turning points in my life.
Mhm.
The very first time I did ayahuasca. And are you familiar with ayahuasca, Beth, by the way?
I am actually.
Okay.
I've never done it,
Yeah.
but you know, I've heard through different people. I think Chelsea Handler has a
Mhm.
whole Chelsea does, and that was one of the episodes. But you know, you hear like really deep introspection comes and like kind of purpose comes from that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So all the work that I did prior to that was very intellectually based. I mean, they did talk a lot about opening up your heart. It was very much the mind and the body and the spirit, but at the same time, like I was understanding everything intellectually, but it
Hmm.
wasn't sinking into my heart. And that's where they say the longest distance in the universe is between your head and your heart, and those 18
Hmm.
inches is the most difficult journey. So I really
Hmm.
felt that there was a disconnect. I wasn't having that emotional feeling towards things. I was a little bit disconnected in that way. And ever since I did the ayahuasca, the very first ceremony I did. So just so everyone knows, it's a small little drink that you have. It's like a little bit of a bitter tasting dark tea type of drink. You down it, and then within an hour, your pineal gland starts opening up. Right, so it's releasing DMT, which is naturally produced in your brains when you sleep a little bit, and heavy doses when you're born and when you die. So when people have psychedelic experiences, a lot of it is the DMT or the third eye opening up. That's why you see a lot of Eastern religions showing that third eye in your pineal gland, Buddha, and in the Hindu gods and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
So the very first experience I had after taking it, I've never taken any psychedelics before, so it was very foreign thing to me. And
Hmm.
when I took it, I started feeling like there's just this really like calm feeling. And then all of a
Hmm.
sudden I was transported to being in the universe, like in outer space and alone in the universe. And there was nothing
Hmm.
there. And it was actually the loneliest feeling I've ever had because there was no planets, there was no stars. It was just blank, empty nothingness. And then I
Hmm.
started like tearing up. I was like, oh my goodness, this is so freaking lonely here. And then after
Hmm.
a couple of minutes, I started seeing this like winged goddess come towards me and wraps her arms around me. And I felt from the loneliest feeling I've ever had to the most love I've ever had. And it was almost like in that moment, she opened up my heart chakra. And ever since then, like so much love has been flowing into my life. And it was almost like a healing that I needed. And it was there
Mm-hmm.
were so many things that happened after that. But essentially, um, that was the moment where I realized, and throughout the rest of the experience, it was like 4 hours, but it showed me that if I'm not living my purpose, then what am I doing here? Am I just going to go through the motions? Am I just going to go through bad relationship after bad relationship? Make the wrong choices just based out of ego or based out of monetary results or something like that, or am I going to actually step up and be the man who I was designed to be? And a lot of that had to do with opening my center. So during the experience, it actually showed me two paths. It showed me one path where I would live my life and live out of purpose, and it showed me
Mm-hmm.
on my deathbed an old man alone, surrounded by nobody, and having all these regrets in life. And they say like the people who don't actually do the things that they want to do at the end of the life, that's what they regret, is not taking the chance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it also showed me the other path of, if I were to take this path, what would my life be, and what would the riches that would come into my life in terms of the experiences and the love? And I decided at that moment, okay, no matter what, however it's going to happen, I'm going to make this a reality. So then from there, I shifted into opening up Om Life. It took me another 2.5 years to get the place open, and then we've been open for 4 years. And just the people that have come into my life, the experiences, the opportunities, it has been a whirlwind, but in the most amazing way, because I'm doing something that's helping people on a deep, deep level, and I'm getting rewarded in so many different ways. And there's so much love in my life, and I, met my fiance through this business, and there's so many different, elements to it that have like healed me as a person, and I know that it's
Mm-hmm.
just like elevating me towards the next chapter into my life, and moving upwards. But I feel great in where I am.
That's amazing. And there's so many parts of that story that are amazing, which I have questions about. But I don't love that you had to experience this, but
Mm-hmm.
I love that your initial image and representation was being in the universe alone, because it's exactly the like experience you described as a child of like not fitting in like anywhere. So you must have had this feeling of loneliness even though you're surrounded by people. And I think people don't get, like, you don't have to physically be alone to feel
Mm-hmm.
alone. And that was the representation of like, this is where you're at. This is how you welcome love in your life, not only from others, but from yourself.
Yeah.
And that's such a beautiful story. And like, why? And that is very multi layered. And there's a lot that's, would be difficult for some people to talk about. Why for you is that easy to talk about?
Because it had such a dramatic impact on my life. It's crazy that after that experience, I spent the next 6 months, no joke, I took off all of like work. I just went around to different people in my life who I thought could be inspired by this conversation. And I'll give you one beautiful example. Is my uncle, so my dad's oldest brother. He also came from India, and my dad sponsored him to come over and whatnot. And he has some sons in Chicago, and every time they were in Chicago, and also his sons, they moved there like 15 years ago, and they started a business. They became really successful. And every time I talk to them, every time I see them, then when they're in Jersey or New York, they're like, "Oh, you should come visit us in Chicago." And I always be like, "Yeah, I'll come one day." And I had no intention, to be honest, of that. And
Mm-hmm.
their kids grew up, they became like in their 20s, and like I never made the effort. And it just showed me that like when someone is showing you love and giving you love, and there's all this love around you, and you feel alone, like where's that disconnect? Is it that you're not getting love, or is it that you're not allowing that love into your heart? So
Right.
I called my cousin after that experience, and I'm talking to him. He's like, "Oh, Anna, is everything okay?" Because I never picked up the phone to call him. So he was like, "Yeah, is everything okay? I just want to make sure, because I never hear from you." Or whatever. uh,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm like, "Yeah, everything's good. I just want to say how you doing, what's up." And then he's like, "Oh, you should come to Chicago." He's like, "All right." And then I'm like, "Okay, let's do it." So I end up booking a flight like the next week, and then I end up going there, and I get to spend time with my cousins, my nephews, and then also my uncle, who was getting up there in age. And I got to spend hours and hours with all of them. I was fully present, which I never was, when they were in town visiting us. I always had things to do for myself, and I was living very selfishly in many ways. And I got to spend like a good 6, 7 hours with my uncle, and really got to connect with him like for a really long time. And then a couple of months after that, he passed away. But I felt so.
Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. It was really difficult, but at the same time, I was like, wow, if I didn't make the decision to open up and allow love into my life, and actually go and make the amends that I needed to do, I would have missed out on that experience. So in a way, I felt like I had the gift to have that ayahuasca experience, and then to be open hearted enough to go and take a chance and just spend some time, some quality time. Really, that's all this life is about for me, is the quality of the people in my life, and really opening up my heart to them. And another example is my mom and I had a really difficult, challenging relationship prior to my ayahuasca experiences, where I resented her in many ways because I didn't feel like I got the love that I wanted to, that I saw other people give their kids, or whatever it was. But I realized during that experience, she went through a lot of hardships into her life. She lost her dad at the age of 17 years old. They were on a vacation, and he had a brain aneurysm. And, from 17 years old, and she was in medical school, she had to be, the protector of her family. So she had an older sister, younger sister, both were not educated. Her mom wasn't educated. So she really had to take care of all of them. So that sense of responsibility that she had, she was never able to just fully relax and chill and be like the fun mom, because she didn't have that ability to do that. So when I had that experience with ayahuasca, I was able to see, maybe I was brought here to show her how to love, rather than you expecting a parent or somebody, they should love me. But maybe it was the other way. So ever since then, I saw her from a very different light. And, we have a beautiful relationship right now. And none of this would be possible if I didn't really look at myself and be honest with myself. And I think a lot of that has to do with, this whole point of this podcast, about being authentic with yourself, and really having the difficult conversations, not only with other people, but really the most important conversations are the ones you have with yourself, and calling yourself out on the bullshit that you are going through, and these preconceived notions of what's right, what's wrong, what's truth, what's not truth. At the end of the day, this whole life experience for me, and I look at it from a very spiritual perspective, is just an experience. I'm a spiritual being living in a physical world. I'm here for a speck of time in the grand scape of reality and time and space, and I'm here for 100 years if I'm lucky, right? So what does this life want to be about? Am I going to live in fear, or am I going to live in love? And, ever since a lot of these experiences I've had, I realized I have to lean into the love, because that's the only reason why I'm here. And if I'm not living in that, then I'm doing a disservice, and I'm being an imposter if I'm living in a more fear-like state.
I love that. And sounds like this experience also helped you to build empathy, because I think when we're stuck in our own suffering and trying to work through our own issues, it's really hard to see the other side, because we're so focused on what's like the tunnel vision of what's happening to us, and kind of staying in a victim stage. Not that you had any reason not to feel all those things, but you were able to open your heart, open your mind, and say, maybe, what did my mom go through, right? And I think what happened is you also reparented yourself, like in those moments. And there's something I like to call, or I learned from my Reiki person, we call it reparenting in therapy, but it's compassionate witness. So maybe in that ayahuasca trip, or the work that came after, you were able to go back to those moments that came up that were probably filled with resentment, and give yourself exactly what you needed, and told yourself it's okay, like you deserve to have what you needed in that moment, but also understanding that your mom might have been showing you love in a way that isn't conventional showing of love.
Absolutely. And like you said, you assumed that I had these experiences where I was able to to heal myself at a mental level. So it's true that I went through these life experiences, like a whole life in review. And I was able to see through these experiences, like if I hurt somebody, or if somebody hurt me, I was able to look at it from a witness, a compassionate witness, and see it from the other person's perspective. And I was able to forgive, and I was able to apologize in that spiritual place. And then afterwards, I reached out to anyone that I could remember to write down their names, and, ex-girlfriends and all this kind of stuff. If I ever said anything to them, I wrote out to him, and so many responded, not just ex-girlfriends, but just anyone, friends and
Right.
people that I used to, be friends with. I had an ex-business partner that, things didn't end up really on any good terms. We just got really into a bad situation, and there was a lot of infighting and stuff like that. And we ended up not being friends when we were friends for a really long time. So I reached out to him after the experience, and I apologized for, my role. And everyone has accountability and responsibility for what happened. But, it was really beautiful because then like a couple of weeks later, I went to go visit him. And, there was a lot of, when you do these kinds of things, when you make amends with people and don't have resentment and don't have that anger and hatred and whatever it is, that's all causing poison inside your body. And it's a chemical reaction, all this fear and this cortisol production. And it's a poison, and it creates really bad things inside of our body. So if we're able to release all of that stuff, and at the end of the day, just realize, listen, we're all God's children, and that we all have problems that we go through and challenges, and we all try to do the best that we can. And if we try to look at everybody from a childlike state as like at some point they were hurt and they're just trying to do the best that they can. So look at everybody as a child, trying to do the best they can, and then you'll have more compassion for them. And I have to really, every single day, especially nowadays, it's everything is so divided and whatnot. And you have to understand everybody has a valid reason for why they feel the way that they feel. That's not to say that you should let them, infringe upon you, but just have compassion for them, regardless of their stances on anything. And I think that's at the end of the day, if you can remain in that place of calm, at some point it's going to reflect on other people. They're going to realize, maybe I'm not handling things in the best possible way. And, this person who's patient with me and compassionate towards me, and I haven't been giving them that, maybe it just might rub off on them. If we're all living this way, I think our world can get so much more united. And especially in this country, there's so much division and whatnot. It's because everybody thinks they're right and the other side is evil, and whatever it is, it's complete nonsense. But if we come from a place of love and understanding, we're all here together, and we're not separate from each other. There's no difference for me. I don't look at people in different races or religions or genders or whatever it is. It's like, you're a spiritual person, and at some point, if you go back to the Big Bang, we were all one, and then we spread apart. And then once we all figure out all the lessons we need to, we're all going to come back together. So why not just speed up that process by giving people more compassion and love?
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be a much nicer place to live if everybody could do that. And, just to speak to what you were saying is like, yes, you have to be compassionate and empathetic to where everybody's coming from, but kind of also what you were speaking to is like, you have to have boundaries for yourself because like if someone is giving off an energy consistently, and it sounded like with your business partner, you had to put in the boundary and end the relationship, at least the business relationship, because it wasn't working for you and it wasn't feeding your soul. It wasn't serving a purpose that was creating a higher vibration, right? So you have to put in boundaries. And I think that's not selfish. It's protecting your energy. It's protecting yourself. And when you're able, like you said, to like understand what happened and talk about it, you can work through it, but there's still boundaries serve a purpose. So I'm glad to hear that was incorporated so that you could, fully understand yourself and reconnect with that person. That's really a beautiful thing too. It doesn't always have to be divisive and we stay polarized. We can come together, and thank you for sharing all that. And, I think you're a really open person, and I think you've done all this work so that you can talk about things without fear. But it sounds like there was a moment in your life where it was hard to talk about things. And is there something that sticks out, or a topic, or just in general, something that like was more hesitant, you were more hesitant to do, and why was it hard for you then?
Yeah, so I think there's many scenarios in my life in the past, before I did this work, that just it stopped me from having these difficult conversations, because I think at the end of the day, when I really look back on it, is that feeling of not feeling loved when I was younger, and I was trying to be a people pleaser, right? So I would try to just go along with everything and not really speak my truth, and do it in a way that was trying to get to a better solution, right? So if somebody said they wanted to go this way and I wanted to go this way, I didn't want to cause friction. I was like, okay, we'll try it, right? But at the end of the day, the more times you do that and you don't speak your truth, then at the back of my mind or in my gut, I was feeling uneasy. I wasn't feeling good about it. I was feeling sick to my stomach. And then I was then at the end of the day resenting the other people for those decisions. And then now playing a game is like, okay, now I can have permission to blame them for something going wrong because it was their choice. But at the end of the day, you're complicit in this whole interaction, right? So, you know, a lot of that was also not stepping into my own power, and I take responsibility for that as not fully being present in that power that I had at the time. So, like we talked about my old business partner, you know, there was a lot of decisions and a lot of spending and things like that were made where they were just absolutely foolish. And rather than having the conversation at the time, you know, I waited and then I lashed out in anger, and it was just like this repeating cycle. And then when you're fighting all the time, it doesn't create a good working relationship. And then, you know, nobody trusts each other. And then it just, you know, everything kind of falls apart. And one of the things that showed me is, okay, yeah, that all happens. But at the end of the day, you don't have to fight to keep something alive if it's not working. Whether it's in relationships, whether it's in business partnerships or whatever, even with family members, if there's constant friction there, until you figure out a way to constructively deal with it, then you don't have to keep putting yourself in that same position of, you know, the anger and all this kind of stuff and the arguments. So yeah, with the business partner, we ended things on a really bad note. Like I said, we made amends after the relationship ended or whatnot in business wise. But you know, in other personal relationships, you know, with ex-girlfriends, I wouldn't tell them what my desires were, what I needed from them, and, you know, what I needed in order to be happy and to be safe and all this kind of stuff. And everybody comes into the table, they have to provide their own happiness. But there was a lot of things that bothered me about exes, and I'm sure vice versa or whatever, but I wasn't able to talk to them about it. And they ended up, you know, not working out or whatever. But rather than having the real conversations, you know, there was a lot of, you know, conversations that, you know, the arguments happened and then we pretended like everything was okay. And then we repeat the cycle and yada, yada, yada. And then years of your life, you know, go by. So I feel like, you know, I did waste some time not being in my power. And that's why a lot of these situations happen. But at the end of the day, I feel so blessed that I finally figured it out and got back on the right track. And, you know, right before I opened my business 4 years ago, I was in a relationship. We were engaged, and after that ended, it didn't end up in a good way. But again, we made amends. Actually, just recently, she reached out and we had a conversation and kind of like made nice closure on that. But after that relationship ended, I made a decision in my life that anytime I go into something, I'm going to be fully authentic and I'm going to tell everybody exactly where I stand. So I was going on first dates, and you know, I was going on a lot of first dates, but like really having the real conversations about what I'm looking for in life. And, you know, a lot of times, you know, people were like, oh, wow, that sounds amazing. But they weren't being authentic with me about if that's really what they want, because they hear something really amazing and extraordinary. And then they're like, okay, maybe I can, you know, attach my whatever your star to them or whatever. Or they would be like, yeah, you know what, that's not what I'm looking for. But it's important to like have these conversations, I think, especially in relationships, because nowadays you want to find somebody that matches your energy and, you know, what you want to create together. And if you're not having those difficult relationships, I know so many people that are in amazing relationships. I know a lot of people that are in relationships where they really have nothing in common, but they're just holding on for the sake of holding on. And I don't think that's doing a service to anyone. So, you know, me and my girlfriend now, Kate, we have the most amazing conversations. We laugh about things. You know, everything is not always like we see eye to eye on everything. But even if we don't see eye to eye, we understand the other person's perspective, and we try to at least, and then kind of move towards a way where we can come together closer. And that's like the most amazing thing I've experienced in a relationship before is somebody who has a lot of self-awareness like myself, and being able to kind of understand that, hey, I'm not perfect. And if I mess up, like this person has my back, you know, and vice versa. And, you know, we're creating some really amazing things and the manifestations that are happening because our energy is aligned. We're not like magnets that are trying to like go away from each other. We're magnets that are trying to pull towards each other.
Right. So where did this shift happen? And I know you talked about it, but like, what was going through your head before? What made it difficult to have these conversations? Like, when I know it's easy to bury emotions and feelings, and I think we were kind of taught that, is like, don't rock the boat, right? And especially when you come from a people pleasing, that's a survival skill, So when you were younger, people pleasing was the way you got the attention and the love you needed. So it's so understandable that that would be the way that you operate when you're older, because, and then you made that shift. But I think there's always a thought going through your head that's what you're really reacting to. So when something wasn't right in your business or something wasn't right in your relationship, what was it that you think you were saying to yourself that stopped you from having that conversation? Because I don't think we're so aware of the thoughts that go through our head, but there is something you're telling yourself that creates this behavior. So if you could think back, and maybe you don't have the answer, but I think these all lead to like negative core beliefs about ourselves. And then when something can validate that, that's more comfortable because that's just what we're used to. So we kind of lean in towards that versus doing the work and being like, okay, I'm going to have the really tough conversation, even though it might stir up feelings in myself and insecurities, so if you can think back, what were you maybe telling yourself was going to happen if you told your partner, hey, I don't think like this spending is right. I don't think this is working. Hey, in this relationship, this is how I'm feeling, and what did you think the consequence was going to be?
I think probably more subconscious than anything else. It was like abandonment, right? So I felt like if this business, it didn't work out, then what would I have? I wouldn't have a business after all, and then I would have to start over. And then in so many relationships, months or years went by, and I was like, oh man, if this doesn't work out, then I'm gonna have to start over. I'm gonna have to meet a new set of parents. I'm gonna have to, like build a relationship. Like maybe it's just easier to just make this work. And even though I wasn't happy in any of these former, situations, but I think that a lot of that had to do with feeling like, like I would have nothing. I would be like bankrupt from that perspective, right?
Right. And it sounds like familiar was comfort, even though it wasn't necessarily the most beneficial for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it was all a blessing, right? To have these experiences, because now at 41, like I'm never going to go through that again. I talk to everyone in my life about this. Is like something's not working out. Like it's fine for us to part and to move on. And like any of my employees, if they find a better situation, like I want them to be happy. I want them to be expanding, ever expanding, and not just feeling like they're stuck somewhere. And whether it's my employees, whether it's business partners, whether it's anyone that I talk to, family, friends, whatever it is. It's like I want everybody to seek their truest happiness, and that's really what my purpose here in this life is all about. And if everyone can find that, I think everyone's going to live the life that they came here for, rather than settling. And I that's one of the things that I never want to do again, is settle on any aspect of my life.
And how did you overcome that feeling of abandonment?
Yeah,
or fear of abandonment. Sorry.
Yeah, so I think it's really learning to love yourself, and when you love yourself, you're never alone. That's what it comes down to. And when you have divine love flowing into your life, then you're never alone. I could lose everything materialistically. I could lose my relationships, but at the end of the day, I know who I am from a spiritual sense, and I feel it, and I know it. And yeah, it might take me a little bit of time to get back to that feeling of like really full empowerment, but I know it's there. And once you taste that elixir, it's never going away.
Right. And what do you think the benefits are? I don't know if you can necessarily list them, and I think you've kind of talked about them, but of being able to overcome this fear and have these conversations. What do you think it's brought to your life?
Strength, empowerment. I think really like being able to make decisions in full power, rather than in the past I would make decisions and have all these like, oh, what if this doesn't work? What if this doesn't work out? And I have these thoughts in my head, oh, you're making the wrong decision or whatnot. But when I make a decision now, I'm like, this is the empowered decision. And if I need to adjust or, counter move, I'll do that. And I'm going to be happy about it. And I'm going to try to be present in the moment in what I'm doing, and not feel like, everything I'm doing is wrong. Where in the past, that was probably a lot of what was going on in the background of my head.
Right. And I think also tapping into your intuition and gut instinct of like, no one's going to know what's right for you but you. And our body is so intelligent in that it receives messages before our brain necessarily does. So that's why you feel it in your gut, because it's telling you we've received messages like, trust this. And I think people are so afraid to trust that or confuse anxiety with it. And it sounds like you've really honed in on knowing what your intuition is, knowing what your gut instinct is. And I wish there was like a guidebook on like how to get that for each person, how to self-love, but there isn't. And you tried different things to cultivate that and it worked. So you're a really good example. Like, I can't tell you exactly how it's going to look for you, but look at me.
Yeah.
I've gone from this to this and I'm living in my authenticity. I'm living in my power. And this stuff no longer becomes an issue for me.
100%. I think intuition is everything. And like you said, you have to trust your intuition over anything else that comes into your life. And especially the stronger your connection is with that, with those downloads that you're getting in terms of how you should be making your decisions rather than listening to other people. Because everybody comes from things, and especially, governments, and they tell you this is what you should be doing with your body, or, this is how you should be living in fear or whatnot. It's like, there's a certain agenda from that perspective. But if your intuition is higher than that and you don't allow that kind of stuff to creep into your life, then you're living empowered versus, when you listen to somebody and something is wrong, but you're just going along with it anyway, there's a spiritual transaction that's happening that's actually damaging you, because that you're doing something that's against your intuition, yet you're still doing it. So how does that make you feel? It doesn't make you feel good. Even maybe consciously you can make up any story you can, but subconsciously it's a spiritual trauma that's going on. It's a psychological trauma. So once you've been psychologically traumatized enough, then you don't have any ownership or domain of your power. It's all given away to somebody else or some other entity.
And it literally creates dis-ease in your body, which creates disease, and they're all like intertwined and, connected. And I think if you want to live a healthy, fully authentic, true to yourself kind of lifestyle, you have to hone that in. You have to do the work on self-love. And I think your story is a perfect example of that. And, I thank you so much for sharing that. And I'd love to leave on a note, from your lived experience, if you could either go back to your younger self, or if there's someone out there listening who you could impress advice upon, what would a piece of advice be?
Yeah, I think the earlier that you can start journaling about what you want your life to be about, start thinking long term in terms of who do you want to be, what do you want to offer, what gifts do you want to offer the world, and then go towards those pursuits. Don't compromise for anyone. Obviously, you want to live in your authenticity, make decisions based on your own intuition, but you don't want to infringe on anyone else's free rights. That's free will. And then also take risks. Every time that I said yes to something outside of my comfort zone, I always either came with a lesson or a huge success. So I'm all about getting outside of that comfort zone, taking the risks, and I'm always a better person at the end of the experience. And then also don't create negative karma. Be very careful about how you speak to people, what you do. If you're making a, negative impact on anyone else's life or anything, whether it's through your business, whether it's through, creating, pollution or whatever it is, you don't want to create negative karma, because my true belief is that, karma is a thing, and, there's an equal and opposite reaction for every action that's taken. So, try to live as light as a feather, show a lot of love in this world, and just be present for people. At the end of the day, there's a lot of healing that needs to happen. And the more that we can be present and being compassionate towards others, we're all part of this, this whole process. And just be a good human being, I guess. That's really it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And where can people find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm active on Instagram. It's anand.life, ANAND.life. And then that's also my website. There's no .com or anything. It's just anand.life. And then check out my podcast, Limitless One Podcast. And if you're in the New Jersey area or New York area, come check out my wellness spa. It's om.life. You see the .life thing. I'm all about living a good life. So Om Life Wellness Modern Recovery Spa, and come check it out. It's an amazing experience. Beth has been one of our first clients that ever came through the doors. The first couple of weeks that we were open. We've been open for 4 years, and we help people with the mind, the body, and the spirit, and getting back to your truest self. And really, that's what I'm here for. That's why I decided to come to this planet.
That's so amazing. And check out Om Life. I suggest it to my clients. I suggest it to everybody. It is open your mind and go to a different type of spa, because this is like a full body, mind body spa that is going to leave you feeling unreal. So my favorite is the flotation and the infrared. So try everything though. I think, we never know what's going to work for us. So I think in vain of everything we're talking about, step out of your comfort zone, try different things, and tell the people you love them, and enjoy that connection with everybody, but especially yourself. So thank you so much. And thank you for listening, and tune in for another episode. Have a great day.
Thank you.